Sarah Martinez stared at the deployment notice in her hands, the official military letterhead blurring through her tears. 3 months. She would be stationed overseas for 3 months, starting next week. Her younger sister Emily's wedding was in 6 weeks, and there was no way she could get leave approved in time. The two sisters had been inseparable since childhood. When their parents divorced when Emily was just 12, Sarah had stepped up as both sister and guardian. She taught Emily how to drive, helped her through heartbreak, and was there for every milestone. Emily had asked Sarah to be her maid of honor 2 years ago, long before either of them knew about this deployment. Sarah walked into Emily's bridal shop where her sister was having her final dress fitting. The moment Emily saw Sarah's face, she knew something was wrong. The seamstress stepped away as Sarah handed over the deployment papers. Emily read them twice, her hands shaking. "There has to be something you can do," Emily whispered, still in her wedding dress. "You're my maid of honor. You're supposed to walk down the aisle before me. You're supposed to give the toast at the reception." Sarah had already spent hours on the phone with her commanding officer, explaining the situation. Military deployments were not flexible for weddings, even for sisters who meant everything to each other. The mission was critical, and Sarah was needed. "I've tried everything, Em. I even offered to take a different assignment, but they need my specific skills for this operation." Sarah's voice broke as she watched her little sister's dream wedding begin to crumble. Emily took off her veil and sat down heavily in the fitting room chair. 23 years we've been together through everything. Our parents' divorce, Dad moving across the country, Mom's cancer scare, my college graduation. You were there for all of it. The wedding was planned for a small town in Colorado where Emily's fiancé Marcus grew up. It was going to be a beautiful outdoor ceremony with mountain views, followed by a reception at the local community center. Emily had chosen every detail thinking Sarah would be right beside her. "I'll video call during the ceremony," Sarah offered weakly, knowing it wasn't the same. Emily shook her head. "It's not about the video call. It's about you being here, in person, celebrating with me. You're the only family that really matters to me." The seamstress returned, pretending not to notice the tears, and helped Emily out of the dress. As they prepared to leave, Emily made a decision that surprised them. "Both? I'm going to postpone the wedding." Sarah grabbed her sister's arm. "Em, no, you can't do that. Marcus's family has already made travel arrangements. The venue is booked, the caterer, the photographer, everything is set. None of that matters. If you're not there," Emily said firmly, "we can reschedule for when you get back." But Sarah knew better. Military deployments sometimes extended. Sometimes soldiers came back different, or injured, or not at all. Emily deserved her perfect day, with or without her sister there. "Promise me something," Sarah said as they walked to their cars. "Promise me you'll go through with the wedding as planned, have the most beautiful day, and I'll celebrate with you from wherever I am in the world." Emily looked at her sister for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. Neither of them could imagine how drastically their story was about to change, or how many people would soon be invested in making sure Sarah could keep her promise to be there for Emily's special day. 3 weeks into Sarah's deployment in Afghanistan, she was stationed at a forward operating base near Kandahar. Her days were filled with intelligence gathering and coordinating with local Afghan forces, but her nights were spent staring at wedding photos Emily texted her and trying to figure out how to be present for her sister's big day. The other soldiers in her unit had heard Sarah's story. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, a father of 3 daughters himself, was particularly moved by Sarah's situation. "My oldest daughter got married last year," he told Sarah one evening as they sat in the mess hall. "If I had missed that day, I don't think I could have forgiven myself." Word of Sarah's dilemma spread throughout the base. Soon, soldiers who barely knew her were offering suggestions. Some proposed she request emergency leave. Others suggested asking the Red Cross to intervene. Captain James Morrison, their commanding officer, listened to the discussions with growing interest. "Martinez," he called her into his office one morning. "I've been thinking about your sister's wedding situation." Sarah's heart jumped, hoping for good news about leave approval. Instead, Captain Morrison had a different idea. "We can't get you home, but maybe we can bring the wedding to you. in a way. What if we set up a live video connection during the ceremony? Not just a phone call, but a full setup so you can participate remotely. It was better than nothing, but Sarah still felt the crushing disappointment of not being physically present. She called Emily that night to explain the plan. The whole unit wants to help, Sarah told her sister over the scratchy satellite phone connection. They're going to set up cameras and everything. It'll be like I'm right there with you. Emily was grateful, but Sarah could hear the sadness in her voice. It's sweet that everyone wants to help, but it's not the same as having you actually here. What neither sister knew was that their story had caught the attention of someone much higher, up the military chain of command. Colonel Patricia Hayes, a veteran officer who had missed her own son's graduation due to deployment, had heard about Sarah's situation through the network of military personnel. Colonel Hayes made a few phone calls. The first was to the base commander, asking about the possibility of temporary leave. The second was to her contacts at the Pentagon, explaining the unique circumstances. The third call was to a military transport coordinator she had worked with for years. It's unconventional, Colonel Hayes explained to the transport coordinator, but this soldier has been exemplary in her service, and sometimes we need to show that the military supports family bonds, not just breaks them. Meanwhile, back at the forward operating base, Sarah's fellow soldiers had taken it upon themselves to make her video participation as special as possible. They pooled their money to buy decorations for the communication room. Someone found a small bouquet of artificial flowers. Another soldier offered to press Sarah's dress uniform so she would look perfect on camera. The entire unit had essentially adopted Emily's wedding as their own project. They printed out photos Emily had sent and hung them around the base. They planned to have a small celebration of their own during the reception, eating military rations while Emily and Marcus danced at their real reception. But the wheels, Colonel Hayes had set in motion, were moving faster than anyone realized. High-ranking officials were reviewing Sarah's service record, her deployment schedule, and the logistics of what they were starting to consider an extraordinary exception. Emily, meanwhile, was trying to embrace the remote participation plan. She asked Marcus to set up a laptop at the altar so Sarah could walk her down the aisle virtually. The local community center where the reception would be held agreed to set up a large screen so Sarah could give her maid of honor speech from Afghanistan. The local newspaper in Emily's Colorado town had gotten wind of the story and wanted to do a feature article about the military sister who would miss the wedding. Emily reluctantly agreed, hoping it might somehow help their situation. What she didn't know was that her story was about to reach people who had the power to change everything, and that her wedding was about to become the center of a military operation unlike anything the small Colorado town had ever seen. The local newspaper article about Emily's wedding and her deployed sister caught the attention of more people than anyone expected. The story was picked up by the Denver Post, then by a national news network. Within days, Sarah and Emily's story had spread across social media, with thousands of people sharing their sympathy and support. Among those who read the story was retired General Robert Kellison, who now worked as a military consultant in Washington, D.C. General Kellison had spent 30 years in the Army and had missed countless family events due to service commitments. Emily's story reminded him of his own daughter's wedding, which he had barely made it to after a last-minute flight from Germany. General Kellison made a phone call to his former colleague, Major General Lisa Santos, who was currently overseeing military transport operations. "Lisa, I'm sending you a news article. Read it and then call me back." 20 minutes later, Major General Santos called back. "It's a touching story, but you know how deployment schedules work. We can't start making exceptions for every family event." "This isn't just any family event," General Kellison argued. "This soldier has an exemplary record. She's been deployed twice in 3 years, and she's the only real family this bride has. Sometimes good public relations and doing the right thing align perfectly." Major General Santos was quiet for a moment. She had been thinking about military morale lately, especially among female soldiers who often sacrificed more family time than their male counterparts. A gesture like this could demonstrate that the military valued its personnel as whole people, not just soldiers. "Let me see what I can do," she said finally. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, Sarah had no idea her story had gone national. She was focused on her duties while preparing for what she thought would be her video participation in Emily's wedding. The unit's communications specialist, Sergeant First Class David Kim, had been working on improving their satellite connection to ensure the video call would be clear. "Martinez, you're getting some serious attention back home," Sergeant Kim told her as he showed her the news coverage on his laptop. "Look at this." Sarah stared at the screen in amazement. There were hundreds of comments from strangers wishing her well, sharing their own stories of missed family events and thanking her for her service. Some people were even calling for the military to find a way to get her home for the wedding. Emily called that night, excited and overwhelmed. "Sarah, you won't believe what's happening here. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. News stations want to interview me, and people from all over the country are sending messages of support. This is crazy, Em. I never wanted this much attention. Maybe all this attention will help somehow," Emily said hopefully. "Maybe someone with influence will see the story and find a way to get you home." What Emily didn't know was that someone with influence had already seen the story, and plans were already in motion. Major General Santos had spent 2 days reviewing logistics, available aircraft, and Sarah's deployment schedule. She had also been in contact with Sarah's commanding officers in Afghanistan, who unanimously praised Sarah's performance and dedication. The plan Major General Santos was developing was unprecedented in its scope and generosity. It would involve military transport aircraft, multiple time zones, and careful coordination with ongoing operations in Afghanistan. But it was technically possible if they could get approval from the highest levels. Colonel Hayes, who had started the chain of inquiries, received a call that made her day. "Colonel, I need you to contact Sergeant Martinez immediately. Don't tell her anything specific yet, but ask her for her sister's exact wedding date, time, and location. Also, I need her dress uniform measurements sent to the quartermaster at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado." Colonel Hayes was confused by the specific request about Peterson Air Force Base, which was only an hour's drive from Emily's wedding location, but she followed orders without question. When Sarah received the seemingly random questions from Colonel Hayes, she answered them dutifully but wondered why the military suddenly needed to know such detailed information about Emily's wedding. She provided the date, the exact time of the ceremony, and the address of both the church and the reception venue. Emily's wedding was now exactly 1 week away. The small Colorado town was buzzing with excitement about the national attention the wedding had received. Local businesses had offered to donate flowers. The mayor wanted to make a special presentation, and the community center had volunteered to upgrade their audio-visual equipment for Sarah's video participation. But none of them knew that military personnel at 3 different bases were working around the clock on a mission that would turn Emily's wedding into something none of them could have imagined. The operation required timing so precise that it would make D-Day planning look simple, and it all hinged on keeping Sarah completely in the dark until the very last moment. Sarah woke up on the morning of Emily's wedding with a heavy heart. In a few hours, she would watch her sister get married through a computer screen while sitting in a military base thousands of miles away. She had pressed her dress uniform the night before and practiced her maid of honor speech dozens of times. What Sarah didn't know was that at 400 hours that morning, Major General Santos had given the final authorization for Operation Wedding Bell, the code name Military Transport, had assigned to Sarah's mission. A C-130 military transport plane was being prepped at Bagram Air Base, just 2 hours from Sarah's location. Captain Morrison walked into Sarah's quarters at 0800 hours with an expression she couldn't read. "Martinez, I need you to pack your gear, immediately. Full dress uniform, personal items, and be ready to move in 30 minutes. Sarah's stomach dropped. "Sir, is this about the wedding? Are you reassigning me so I can't participate in the video call?" "Just pack your gear, Sergeant." "That's an order." Confused and worried, Sarah threw her belongings into her duffel bag. Had she done something wrong? Was this punishment for all the attention her story had received? Her fellow soldiers watched her pack with knowing looks, but no one would explain what was happening. Sergeant Rodriguez walked up to her as she finished packing. "Martinez, whatever happens today, remember that your unit has your back. We're all rooting for you." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, Captain Morrison returned. "Let's move, Sergeant. You have a transport to catch." Sarah was escorted to a military vehicle and driven to the airstrip, still completely confused about what was happening. When she saw the C-130 transport plane waiting with engines running, her confusion deepened. These planes were used for important missions, not for moving individual soldiers around. "Sir, where am I being transferred to?" Sarah asked Captain Morrison as they approached the aircraft. "You'll be briefed during the flight," he replied, with what Sarah could swear was a slight smile. As Sarah climbed aboard the aircraft, she noticed it was configured unusually. Instead of the typical military transport setup, there were comfortable seats and what appeared to be communication equipment. The loadmaster, Staff Sergeant Patricia Wells, greeted Sarah with unusual warmth. "Sergeant Martinez, welcome aboard. We're going to take excellent care of you during this flight." As the plane took off, Sarah still had no idea where she was going, or why. The flight crew was friendly but evasive about their destination. After 2 hours in the air, Staff Sergeant Wells approached Sarah with a clipboard. "I need to brief you on today's mission, Sergeant." Sarah sat up straighter, expecting to learn about some new assignment or emergency deployment. "Your mission today is to attend your sister's wedding." Sarah stared at Staff Sergeant Wells, certain she had misheard. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I think there's been some mistake. My sister's wedding is in Colorado, and I'm supposed to participate by video from Afghanistan." Staff Sergeant Wells smiled. "Sergeant Martinez, you are currently aboard a United States Air Force transport aircraft bound for Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. Your estimated arrival time is 1400 hours local time. Your sister's wedding ceremony begins at 1600 hours. Sarah felt like the world had tilted on its axis. "This isn't possible. I'm deployed. I can't just leave my post for a wedding." "You've been granted emergency leave, authorized at the highest levels of command. Major General Santos herself approved this mission after your story received national attention and demonstrated the military's commitment to supporting our service members' family bonds." Sarah started crying right there in the military transport plane. The crew, who had all been briefed on the emotional nature of this mission, gave her space to process the overwhelming news. "My sister has no idea I'm coming," Sarah whispered. "That's correct," Staff Sergeant Wells confirmed. "This operation has been classified to ensure it remains a surprise. Your sister believes you are still in Afghanistan preparing for video participation." Sarah spent the rest of the flight alternating between tears of joy and disbelief. She couldn't believe the military had organized an entire transport mission just to get her to Emily's wedding. She kept asking the crew if this was really happening, and they kept assuring her it was. Meanwhile, in Colorado, Emily was getting ready for her wedding with no idea that her sister was currently flying across the world to be there. Emily's friends were helping her with her dress and makeup while trying to keep her spirits up about Sarah's absence. "At least you'll be able to see her on the video screen," her maid of honor replacement, their cousin Lisa, said as she adjusted Emily's veil. Emily nodded, but everyone could see the sadness in her eyes. The one person who mattered most to her wouldn't physically be there to share the most important day of her life. At Peterson Air Force Base, military personnel were coordinating the final phase of Operation Wedding Bell. A convoy of military vehicles was standing by to transport Sarah to the wedding location, and her dress uniform had been pressed and prepared by the base's finest military tailors. The most incredible family surprise in military history was about to unfold, and Emily had no idea that her perfect wedding day was about to become even more perfect than she had ever imagined. The C-130 touched down at Peterson Air Force Base at exactly 1400 hours, just as Staff Sergeant Wells had predicted. Sarah looked out the window and saw something that took her breath away. A convoy of military vehicles was lined up on the tarmac, including 2 black SUVs with military escort vehicles. This wasn't just transportation. It was a full military honor convoy. Colonel Patricia Hayes was waiting at the bottom of the aircraft steps, along with a team of personnel Sarah didn't recognize. As Sarah descended from the plane, still wearing her combat uniform, Colonel Hayes stepped forward. "Sergeant Martinez, welcome to Colorado. I'm Colonel Hayes, and I've been coordinating your mission with Major General Santos. We have exactly 90 minutes to get you ready and to your sister's wedding." Sarah was escorted to a building on the base where she discovered they had prepared everything she could possibly need. Her dress uniform had been perfectly tailored and was hanging ready for her. A military hairstylist was standing by to help her get ready, and they had even arranged for a makeup artist who specialized in working with military personnel. "Colonel, I can't believe this is happening," Sarah said, as she changed into her dress uniform. "How many people were involved in making this possible? Let's just say when a story touches the right hearts at the right levels of command, the military can move mountains," Colonel Hayes replied. "You have about 40 minutes to get ready, and then we move out." As Sarah got ready, Colonel Hayes explained the final phase of the plan. "Your sister's ceremony is taking place at Mountain View Chapel, about 45 minutes from here. The reception is at the Riverside Community Center. We've coordinated with local authorities for the convoy route, and we have permission to arrive during the pre-ceremony period." Sarah's hands were shaking as the hairstylist worked on her hair. "Does anyone at the wedding know I'm coming?" "Only the officiant has been briefed, and only because we needed to coordinate the timing. Your sister, her fiancé, and all the guests believe you are still in Afghanistan. The chapel has been told that a military honor convoy will arrive to deliver a special message from deployed personnel, but they don't know it's you." At 1500 hours, exactly 1 hour before Emily's ceremony, the convoy departed Peterson Air Force Base. Sarah sat in the lead SUV with Colonel Hayes, watching the Colorado landscape pass by. She had never seen mountains so beautiful, and she couldn't believe she was actually going to make it to Emily's wedding. Meanwhile, at Mountain View Chapel, Emily was in the bridal preparation room, trying to remain calm as her wedding coordinator made final arrangements. The video equipment for Sarah's remote participation had been set up near the altar, and Emily kept glancing at it, wishing it could somehow magically transport her sister to Colorado. "The military convoy should be here in about 15 minutes, the wedding coordinator told Emily. "They're going to deliver a special video message from deployed soldiers who wanted to congratulate you. It might help you feel closer to Sarah." Emily nodded, touched that other soldiers cared about her wedding but still missing her sister terribly. Marcus, Emily's fiancé, was in the groom's room when his best man pointed out the window. "Marcus, you need to see this." Outside, a military convoy was approaching the chapel. 2 escort vehicles led the way, followed by the main SUVs with 2 more escort vehicles bringing up the rear. It looked like a presidential motorcade had arrived at their small mountain wedding. The wedding guests who were already seated in the chapel began murmuring as they saw the convoy arrive through the windows. Many of them had read about Emily's deployed sister, and they assumed this was the military's way of showing support for the family. Emily's wedding coordinator went outside to greet the convoy, expecting to receive video equipment or a formal message. Instead, Colonel Hayes stepped out of the lead vehicle in full dress uniform. "Ma'am, I'm Colonel Patricia Hayes, and I have a very special delivery for the bride." The wedding coordinator was confused. "A delivery? We weren't expecting anything physical." Colonel Hayes smiled. "Ma'am, I'm delivering the bride's maid of honor." At that moment, Sarah stepped out of the SUV in her perfect dress uniform, looking absolutely radiant. The wedding coordinator gasped and immediately understood what was happening. "Oh my goodness, Emily has no idea you're here, does she?" "That's correct, ma'am. We'd like to surprise her, if that's possible." The wedding coordinator was so excited she could barely speak. "She's in the bridal room. She thinks you're in Afghanistan about to participate by video call. This is going to be the most incredible surprise in wedding history." Sarah's heart was pounding as she walked toward the chapel, accompanied by Colonel Hayes and followed by the other military personnel who had made this miracle possible. She was about to surprise her sister in a way that would change both of their lives forever. Through the chapel windows, she could see the guests seated and waiting, and somewhere inside, Emily was preparing to get married without her sister beside her, having no idea that her dream was about to come true in the most spectacular way possible. Emily was putting the finishing touches on her makeup when she heard a commotion outside the bridal preparation room. Her cousin Lisa looked out the window and gasped. "Emily, there's a military convoy outside. It looks really official." Emily's heart jumped, wondering if something had happened to Sarah. "Is everything okay?" Did something happen with the video call setup? The wedding coordinator knocked on the door, her voice trembling with excitement. Emily, the military representatives are here, and they have something very special for you. Can you come out to the main corridor? Emily gathered her dress and walked out of the preparation room, followed by her bridesmaids. She expected to see some officers with video equipment or perhaps a formal letter from Sarah's unit. Instead, she found herself face to face with Colonel Hayes in full dress uniform. Miss Martinez, I'm Colonel Patricia Hayes, and I have the honor of delivering your maid of honor. Emily looked confused. My maid of honor? But my sister is in Afghanistan, and we're going to connect by video call. Colonel Hayes smiled and stepped aside. Actually, your sister is right here. Sarah stepped forward from behind the other military personnel, wearing her perfect dress uniform and the biggest smile Emily had ever seen. Emily's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. She screamed, dropped her bouquet, and ran towards Sarah, her wedding dress flowing behind her. The sisters embraced so tightly that everyone watching started crying, including the tough military officers who had made this moment possible. How are you here? How is this possible? Emily sobbed into Sarah's shoulder. The United States military moved heaven and earth to get me here, Sarah replied, tears streaming down her face. I found out this morning. They flew me here on a military transport plane. The wedding guests inside the chapel could hear the commotion and began looking toward the entrance. Marcus appeared in the doorway and immediately understood what was happening. He had been worried about Emily's sadness over Sarah's absence, and now he was witnessing the most incredible surprise he could have imagined. Sarah, you made it, Marcus called out, joining the emotional reunion. Word spread quickly through the chapel that the deployed sister had miraculously arrived. The guests were buzzing with excitement, many of them wiping away tears as they realized they were witnessing something truly extraordinary. Colonel Hayes approached the sisters as their initial emotions settled. Sergeant Martinez, you have exactly 30 minutes before the ceremony begins. I suggest you ladies finish getting ready together the way you always planned. Emily and Sarah went back into the bridal preparation room, where Emily's bridesmaids were still in shock over what they had just witnessed. Sarah helped Emily with her veil just as they had practiced years ago when Emily first got engaged. I can't believe you're really here, Emily kept saying. I was trying to be brave about you not being here, but it was breaking my heart. I know, Em. It was breaking mine too. But somehow all the right people heard our story and decided to make a miracle happen. The ceremony began exactly on schedule. Sarah walked down the aisle first in her military dress uniform instead of the bridesmaid dress they had originally planned, but looking more beautiful than Emily could have imagined. The guests rose to their feet, many of them applauding as Sarah took her place at the altar. When Emily appeared at the back of the chapel with their stepfather, she was glowing with happiness. She had her sister beside her, just as she had always dreamed. The ceremony was perfect, with Sarah holding Emily's bouquet and standing right where she belonged. During the reception at the community center, Sarah gave her maid of honor speech to a room full of people who already knew the incredible story of how she came to be there. She thanked the military personnel who had made it possible, and she talked about the bond between sisters that even deployment couldn't break. Colonel Hayes and several other military personnel stayed for the reception as honored guests. The local community treated them like heroes, thanking them repeatedly for making Emily's dream come true. As the evening wound down, Sarah realized she would have to leave early the next morning to return to Afghanistan and complete her deployment. But she had been there for the most important day of her sister's life, and that was all that mattered. The story of Sarah and Emily's wedding became legendary within military circles, demonstrating that sometimes the most important missions are the ones that keep families together. Emily's wedding album would forever contain photos of military personnel who had gone above and beyond to deliver the most important wedding guest of all. Years later, when Sarah completed her military service, she would often tell the story of how an entire military operation was organized just to get her to her sister's wedding. It became a testament to the military's commitment to its personnel and a proof that sometimes, when the stars align and the right people care enough, miracles really can happen.